This is one of the brightest LEDs in the world, capable of emitting over 120,000 lumens and consuming 1.5 kilowatts of power to do so. Insane. This is an incredible amount of light, but 1.5 kilowatts of power generates a ton of heat as well. And without extreme cooling, it just will literally burn itself up. My initial attempt at preventing this from happening was to use a custom-built water cooling loop to pull heat away from the LED as quickly as possible. Despite promising results, it drew so much power that it literally blew up my power supply, putting a stop to further testing. It's clearly a specialist component, unique and extremely rare. So in this video, I want to do it justice by building a better engineered rig for it that can not only keep its temperature in check, but also power it portably, so that we can, for the first time ever, see what this LED is truly capable of. We're in for a treat. So I'm going to need to go to extreme lengths to stop this LED from burning up, and by my calculations, I'll need 6 full copper radiators to dump its heat into. These are really intended for water-cooled PC builds, but they should provide a huge amount of cooling capacity for the LED, and as I have 6 of them, they can make a pretty cool hexagon shape, which I think will look amazing for the build. To mount them together like this, I'm making my own custom brackets out of brass, bending some tabs over to get the required angles. I've decided to use brass here because I want this build to be aesthetically interesting, and brass is always a great choice for this. Now, as each radiator has room for 3 fans, I'm going to max things out, giving us 18 total fans, which is absolutely wild, and we're only just getting started. At this stage it is a little bit wobbly, but thanks to geometry this is easy to fix with 3 internal bracing rods, making it an extremely solid framework to base the rest of the system around. Now, to begin the water cooling pathway, I'm just using some rubber tubing to link each of the radiators together in series, meaning that water will flow out of one and into the next until it makes its way all the way through them, with 2 ports left open as the in and out ports. Next up, for a large water cooling system like this is usually a reservoir, which stores additional coolant and provides a trap to capture any remaining bubbles that are left inside the loop. While there is just enough room in here to squeeze a normal PC-style reservoir, I want to make my own bespoke reservoir because I want to have it perform an additional cooling role that a normal reservoir is incapable of. You see, my LED is split into 6 individually powered arrays, each one requiring 250 watts to reach full brightness. This is a very clever design because it means that the power draw can be spread over 6 individual power boards, so they don't have to be particularly expensive. In fact, mine are simply voltage regulators with current control, and I'll be going into more detail about them later. But the main thing to note for now is that in powering the LED, they do heat up quite a bit, so I want to give my reservoir the ability to cool them down. To make it able to do this, I'm going to construct my reservoir's outer perimeter out of brass box section with triangular cuts in it, which allows me to bend it into a hexagon, 1 edge for each power regulator board. As I want the water to flow through this perimeter, I'm adding a brass barb fitting so that water can enter it directly. After entering here, it'll be split and flow around the outer perimeter, and then exit through this top hole and into the central part of my hexagon, which I want to convert into a water chamber. It will of course need to be watertight for this, so I've cut out a brass plate to act as a cap, which too can have its own brass barb fitting where the water will exit. The beauty of using brass for these parts is that they can be soldered together to make them watertight, and it's such a cool way of making things like this without complex tools. Now, I'm definitely not an expert, and I tend to use too much heat, which results in a lot of charred flux, but after some cleanup it looks okay and appears to be well sealed. As for the front, it too needs a cap, but instead of soldering it straight on top and blocking my view of the inside, I want to cut a hole in it first to make a window where we can later observe the water level through a piece of acrylic. To provide a strong clamping force for this acrylic, I'm adding some PCB pillars in each corner for some screws to do this job. Now, again, it is pretty messy, but after some cleanup, it looks so cool, and is a reminder that you don't need expensive tools to make something interesting. Anyway, to add the window and finally make it watertight, I've got a little gasket ring to go around the opening, on top of which my acrylic glass can sit. It is quite a thick piece to make sure that it's nice and strong, and when it's clamped down onto the gasket, it makes a really tight seal, which I confirmed with a pressure gauge. As I mentioned earlier, the intention is to have this reservoir cool down my 6 voltage regulator boards, and as they each have a metal bottom plate into which they dump all of their generated heat, just having each board touch the outer perimeter rim through some thermal pads is all that it takes to wick away enough thermal energy from them to keep them properly cooled, and it's a good, compact way of getting both a reservoir and power system combo. As for mounting it inside the outer shell, well, I don't have any proper metal bending tools, but using a vise and a hammer, I've been able to wrangle a sheet of brass into a hexagon shape to act as a cover, with some brass PCB pillars soldered to the front to act as mounting points. This basically forms a front facade for my reservoir, allowing it to be lowered into the main shell and mounted securely, and it looks absolutely insane. This is going to have a wild aesthetic when it's finished. So with the core of the water cooling system now in place, it's time to mount the LED. One of the problems though with water cooling this particular LED is that it is just so physically large. I can't find any water block that's big enough to cover its entire backside and keep it cool. Thankfully though, last time I tested this thing out, I actually built my very own large format water block to do this very task. I made it by getting a solid copper heatsink and using brass to make a watertight chamber around it. This forces the water to flow through the heatsink's fins and is incredibly effective at pulling vast amounts of heat away from the LED. Getting this ready, the LED itself needs to be thermally coupled to the block using some thermal compound, and clamped down with some pretty thick copper brackets. If you've been wondering how I've been making all of these individual pieces, by the way, my new method is to design them in some CAD software and then print them as a thin, dimensionally accurate 2D layer on my 3D printer. This gives me a template that can be used to precisely mark out the sheet material, including any hole positions, allowing it to be simply cut out with a jigsaw. I love this method because it's a rapid way of making these simple 2D shapes, and if care is taken, it's possible to get them more than precise enough for projects like this, and it's a fun, fast and cheap alternative to using a CNC, in true DIY perks fashion. Anyway, to hold it in front of the cooling unit, my plan is to use some copper pipes to make a supporting framework for it. By screwing these pipes to the radiators, it allows me to use 45-degree elbow joints to pull the pipe ends together into a point, which then in turn go into a little custom bracket made from end caps. The beauty of using copper pipes like this is that all of the joints can be soldered together just like the reservoir, making for a very strong supportive structure, one that's plenty strong enough to hold the LED and its water block. Oh yeah, this is looking really cool. So with the LED in place at last, it's time to hook it up to the water loop and get it filled with coolant. To ensure the longevity of the loop, I'm using a pre-made coolant mix that includes corrosion inhibitors and a biocide, so it should last for years before needing to be replaced. It's worth noting too that I've closed the loop at the back with a water pump that pulls the water directly out of the central hole in the reservoir, and as you can see, the area above this hole is used to capture any bubbles and keep the system operating efficiently. If this area gets too full of air, which it did several times during the filling process, I have included a little bleed valve to get rid of it. This is simply a threaded hole in the back of the reservoir with a flathead screw and mini rubber gasket to keep it sealed. It's rudimentary, but it's surprisingly effective. So at this stage, I could technically power the LED on and test it out. However, that would be a little bit risky. You see, if the pump fails or the water stops flowing for whatever reason, the LED would very quickly overheat and potentially die. And as it's a $1,300 part, that would be a very expensive mistake. So what I need to do is build in some sort of protection methods that will cut the power to the LED if it detects anything that would harm it. And to do that, I think that I can use a little programming board. However, before I get on with this extra little mission, it's time for a quick ad from this video's sponsor, Incogni. Operating in an ever-digitalized world means that information about you, whether it's your name and addresses, social security numbers, social media profiles, and even, if they apply, court cases, it's all being gathered together to build a profile about you. The data brokers that do this intend to then sell this information on, often without your realizing, to advertisers or other companies. Scammers and fraudsters too can sometimes get their hands on this data, which is often the cause of spam calls, identity theft, and loss of control over personal data. Now, due to certain laws that are in place, you do have the right to request removal of this data, which the brokers must comply with, but the process of doing this manually could literally take years. And this is where Incogni can help. They reach out to the data brokers on your behalf and request removal of your data, and then they automatically handle any objections. They then continually monitor for your information and perform repeated removals, making their yearly subscription particularly beneficial. You can try it out risk-free with their 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can get a refund if you aren't satisfied. If all of this sounds good to you, visit the link below or go to incogni.com/DIYperks and use the code DIYperks to get a massive 60% off their annual plan. So again, that's incogni.com/DIYperks or the link below, not forgetting to use the code DIYperks and get control back over your data today. So, in an effort to protect the LED from burning up if the cooling system were to ever fail, I'm going to use an Arduino programming board to monitor 3 different sensors: a water flow sensor, a thermal sensor, and the pump's rotation sensor. If all 3 of these sensors report data back that falls within my set parameters, my Arduino board will trigger a bank of relays that allow my voltage regulator boards, through a sense line, to each start outputting voltage to the LED. In any other scenario, like the temperature of the coolant being too high or the water not flowing quickly enough, the Arduino will deactivate the relays and the LED will remain off. And it fits all inside the unit on a simple 3D printed part. So things are looking really good now, but how on earth am I going to power this thing on? Well, a massive LiPo battery should do the trick. It's intended for high-power RC models and is capable of delivering approximately 5 kilowatts of power, which is plenty for my 1.5 kilowatt LED. As this is basically a pack of raw battery cells though, it's necessary for me to complement it with a battery management board, which will protect the cells from any dangerous scenarios like short circuits or over-discharge and excessive current draw, etc. As the cells only have a thin layer of shrink wrap around them though, physical protection is required as well. My first attempt at this was to make a shell out of aluminium. While it protects the battery nicely, it does look horrendously out of place and completely destroys the build's vibe. Like, seriously, what on earth was I thinking? Anyway, scrapping that, I'm switching back to brass. A simple folded perimeter, soldered straight onto a flat base. Sanded and polished, this looks really quite smart, with the base seam not even visible. This shell should protect the battery cells nicely, and by joining my copper pipes together on the back to provide a mount for it, it ends up looking so much better than my previous attempt. Now, a cool extra that came with my battery management board is this data screen that can display various battery parameters alongside a power button. Pressing this power button activates the battery, and we can see its charge state on the screen as well as the active current draw, which is presently 1 amp. This current draw is mostly the fans and water pump, with a little for the Arduino. Now thankfully, all of the sensors that the Arduino is monitoring appear to be reporting values within my set parameters, as the Arduino audibly flips the relays into their on state with a satisfying click. But the LED remains unlit. This is because the voltage regulators, which provide power to the LED, depend on adjustable trimmer potentiometers to set both the output voltage and output current. And as I don't have access to these potentiometers, what with the boards being buried inside the shell, I earlier decided to take them off and extend them with wires to make them adjustable remotely. However, presently these wires that come off the voltage regulators aren't connected to anything. They just form an open circuit, which means that each voltage regulator defaults to its lowest possible voltage, hence why the LED doesn't even illuminate. So the plan is to hook each one of these extension wires up to its own new external potentiometer. Each one of these will control the output voltage of the board it's connected to, allowing them to control the LED's brightness. To keep things neat, I've mounted them inside a little 3D printed shell with a brass cap to match the aesthetic of the rest of the build. And this is where I thought I'd have a little bit of fun. You see, while it is necessary for me to have 6 individual potentiometers, one for each power board, it isn't necessary for me to have 6 individual knobs for them, because I can simply link them together mechanically using some brass gears. These make the potentiometers rotate together, and although the rotation direction is inverted on half of them, this doesn't matter at all because potentiometers provide 2 points of reference for resistance, making their direction of rotation irrelevant so long as they're wired up correctly. To add an overall control knob for it, I'm including a couple more cogs. One smaller one to gear the thing down, and a much larger one for the knob itself, purely for aesthetics and feel. This looks so cool, and while it is perhaps a little bit eccentric, you've got to have a bit of fun with the design sometimes, and this certainly did it for me. So after screwing it tightly in position and hooking it up to my loose wires, it really finishes off the build nicely and provides a sort of weighty and significant feel for controlling brightness, which is just as well considering how bright this thing will be getting. Speaking of weighty, the whole thing weighs about 25 kilograms. And I'm not going to lie, this is pretty heavy for me, so to make it a little bit easier to handle, I'm adding some leather straps that go to a copper pipe grip, which does help quite a bit. So with the brightness control in place, the LED will actually illuminate once it's gone through its initial startup checks, as we can see. However, before testing this out at full brightness, one problem that I'm foreseeing is that this is completely unfocused light, which means that it'll illuminate close subjects very brightly, but anything far away will appear much dimmer. So I need to pull those light rays and throw them forwards using some optics, which will help it to illuminate distant subjects much more brightly. As the surface area of the LED is just so large, I'm using a deep half-sphere lens for this. It's not perfect, but the light from the LED is significantly more focused now, but before I add another lens to focus it yet more, I want to have a little experiment. So I've got some matches here. Will it light it? So I've got a pen just in case I need to make it black, but let's try it without the pen. Even with sunglasses. Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness, it's smoking. Will it light? Spontaneous. Oh, no way! I have just lit a match using light. That is crazy. Wow. What have I built? That's nuts. Whoa! Instant fire! Oh my goodness. That's crazy. What's so remarkable about this is that we aren't observing the effects of infrared heat energy here, because the LED barely emits any infrared radiation at all. No, what we are seeing here is visible light photons at such a high intensity that they themselves cause the heating. Wow. Now, the second and final lens that I want to add is a glass Fresnel lens. This has a much greater diameter than the first lens and helps to pull the light rays together even further. So with this lens system in place, it should illuminate distant objects much more brightly. How brightly? Let's go and find out. Oh, it's heavy. So I've come out here to the forest, and just for comparison, I've got a parabolic flashlight here. Generally it's pretty bright, but as you can see, Yeah, it's light, but it's not crazy. Let's get crazy. Are you guys ready? Let's light this up. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness me. Look at that. Oh my goodness. Wow. I've never seen a light like this before. That is wild. The amount of light bursting forth from the LED is truly spectacular. And just to give you some way of contextualizing it, here is a shot of my car's headlights on high beam. These are those stupidly bright LED headlights that really have no right to be on the roads, but they look like cheap dollar store flashlights in comparison to my LED SUPERNOVA. It's just in a completely different league. Absolutely wild. So my dream of utilizing this one-of-a-kind LED is complete. So those are absolutely mind-blowing results. I cannot believe how bright this LED really is. I've never seen a light quite like it. Absolutely incredible. However, how well is the cooling system actually performing at keeping the LED cool? And how long does it last for on the battery? Well, both of these questions can only be answered with a stress test. And I'll be honest with you, this is going to be a nerve-wracking experience. Because having the system powered on at full brightness for as long as the battery will last will push everything to its limit. If the cooling system can't keep up, the temperature will gradually increase until the LED explodes, which would be a very sad end to this project. However, I don't think that that's going to happen, so let's give it a go. The first 5 minutes are the scariest, because up until this point I've had the LED on for only perhaps 2 minutes at a time in extremely cold weather. So anything above that is uncharted territory, particularly as we're in a warm internal room. My first observation is that after this 5 minutes, the system becomes almost fully heat-soaked, with the coolant temperature at 32 degrees and the fans ramped to 74%. I can feel the temperature of the room getting hotter and hotter as I do this test. It's genuinely slightly uncomfortable and a little bit nerve-wracking, as I said. This is scary. This fear, though, is thankfully unwarranted. For the remainder of the test, the coolant temperature only creeps up a single digit, and there's plenty more cooling capacity available as the fans are far from their maximum speed. The battery, however, is showing a consistent and unchecked increase in its temperature, and at the tail end of the test it's likely at least 50 Celsius internally, which is approaching danger territory for a lithium battery. It's going to manage it, but barely. Look how long we've been going for. It's almost a quarter of an hour. That's actually wild. Wow. After a total of 15 minutes, the battery is depleted and the BMS clicks off. Not a bad runtime considering the consistent 1500 watt draw. It's off, it's reached the low point. Let's check the thermals. Amazingly, the maximum temperature of the LED's thermal substrate was 65 degrees Celsius. 65 Celsius! This is well below the maximum allowable declared on its datasheet, and it's really very impressive given the amount of power flowing through it. So I'm very happy to report that the LED is now being successfully cooled, and is ready to go. So I hope you've enjoyed seeing this LED out in the wild. It's been truly mind-blowing to see just what it is capable of, and it's been hugely rewarding to finally see it after all of these years. Now, I actually don't believe that this is categorically the world's brightest flashlight, believe it or not. However, I do think that there is potential to take it there. So make sure you're subscribed because things are going to get wild. But other than that, I'm Matt, you've been watching DIY Perks, and I hope I see you next time. Goodbye for now.